That was so perfect. You may not know it, but our musicians really take into heart the title of the talk. And Nadine came in and said, what do we do with a topic that's called, How Old Are You? But you did a beautiful job, thank you. That really touched my heart. So how old are you? What do you think?
Some days it's not very old.
And some days it's very changeable. Well, I want to start this talk out with a quote from Khalil Gibran, the book, The Prophet. The timeless in you is aware of life's timelessness and knows that yesterday is but today's memory and tomorrow is today's dream. And that which sings and contemplates in you is still dwelling within the bounds of that first moment which scattered the stars into space, that first moment. And we know the universe is still expanding. It must have been a powerful moment. So Ernest Holmes said, in truth, there is no beginning or end, for there was never a commencement of life in the eternal, and there will never be an ending. Good news or not so good news. Age is a human's measurement of a period of experience. In The Science of Mind, which is our textbook, on page 180, Holmes tells us, there can never come a time when we shall stop progressing. Age is an illusion. Limitation is a mistake. And unhappiness is ignorance. Why, might you ask? Because the life we are humanly experiencing every moment is the life of God. That's why. It's pretty powerful. The title every week on Sundays was created months ago by a number of ministers who put together these titles, and I thought, what am I going to do with this? How old are you? And, I have to go with what's important to me, what's really calling to me. And this week I was invited to visit a friend whose husband had been in the hospital for a while, and he was on life support. And I was glad to do that. It's part of the calling of a minister to be available to people. So I was expecting to do a positively peaceful prayer, and it would go well. So when I arrived, my friend said to her husband, I asked Reverend Mary to come and tell us how it's going to feel when you die. And then what's going to happen afterwards. So I took a deep breath. And when I completed my final prayer, they looked very peaceful, and they were smiling at each other. And he raised his hand and waved at me. So I thought, okay, good job, Mary. So I wanted to share that. Well, now that stimulates thought about timelessness, agelessness. And so I wanted to share from three sources this morning. One is, of course, our Science of Mind text by Dr. Ernest Holmes. And then Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote a beautiful essay called The Oversoul. And then someone whose books I read a long time ago, his name is James Van Praagh, and he's a medium who has this immensely amazing ability to communicate with people who have passed over. I have 3 of his books, and I thought, how many books did he write? So on break, I checked, I went to Amazon. He's written 22 books on his experiences in communicating with people who passed over. And he writes this: we're not here to be enslaved by the tenets of a society that dwells on the lower or negative aspects of being here on this earth. If we've been dwelling on guilt, worry, or fear, the time has come to reacquaint ourselves with the meaning of God and to envision ourselves as the truth that we are spiritual beings of light and love. This is after hundreds of experiences communicating with those who have passed. He says, we are and always will be a spark of the divine. When every day we see the world with spirit in mind, we're living the truth. If our soul that gives our body its life, it's our soul that gives our body its life and its expression. And when our spiritual self is empowered, we experience the fullness that this life has to offer. He says, focus your awareness on spirit. Be in the present moment. Be in charge of what you're doing in your life. I said it's like driving a car. You're aware, you're awake, you're watching what's going around, but you are in charge of driving that car. Be in charge of driving your life from a spiritual point of view. Because we know the truth is whatever we give our energy to increases. And we don't want that to be guilt, fear, or worry. I wish spiritual enlightenment could be done by just waving a magic wand over you. Or if I could write a spreadsheet that would have all the information, I'd hand it out to you every Sunday. I just wish, but it's not true. Why spend time wishing on something like that when I can just tell you and you go, oh, got it, got it. Each soul comes to their own truth in a personal way at the proper time. So if you're waiting, it's coming, don't worry. Because we can't force our souls to grow. We can't sprinkle fertilizer unless it's the fertilizer of truth. And if we fertilize and nurture our knowing about our soul, it will blossom, it will grow. In the Science of Mind text, I love the chapter about what the mystics taught. It's a great chapter to read. It brings information together from all those who were considered mystics over time, Jesus, Buddha, these many people who perceived the truth, who saw this life as a spiritual life. And these are people who started the greatest religions based on their personal experience of God. There are also the great poets like Walt Whitman, people like Tennyson, Browning, Homer. And their poems often feel immortal, just like the one that Craig read so beautifully. Just kind of takes your breath away because it's a true sense of the spiritual nature of life. Holmes writes about this cobbler. His name was Jacob Boehme, and he was working on his shoes in his little shop, and he looked up and saw the cosmos in the geranium plant on his windowsill. And a major awakening, and sometimes it is like that. We see a butterfly, we see a flower, we see something, and it touches something in us and awakens us to there is so much more going on than we're consciously aware of when we're working on shoes or working on anything that we're doing. So we sense this atmosphere of God in three ways: in our body, in our physical world, in the laws of the universe, when we see what our mind believes, what we believe gets created in our experience, and in our conscious world when we're looking around. So those three ways we can often see the various aspects of God. Because the mystics all agreed, our life is ours to do with what we want. If we turn to God, we always receive information, intuitive knowledge from on high. But it's us who has to tune into that. So guess what? This is a lifelong experience of learning. Many of the classes we're giving are part of our home office's lifelong learning catalog. If you haven't taken a class lately, you might think about it from this perspective. Because in my life, when I look back in my life, it's fascinating. It's like these spiritual breadcrumbs. I've been following these spiritual breadcrumbs, weaving in and out of different experiences in life and different people in different places. And it's interesting because I was raised very strict Catholic. And I got to be 16 years old, and the guy across the street looked pretty cool. And so we started dating, and he was a Lutheran. My parents were not happy. It wasn't very long before I was buying books on other religions and leaving them laying around the house. They really weren't happy about that. And then I married the guy at 19. Oh, boy. And none of my family could come to the wedding because at that time it was a mortal sin if you went to a non-Catholic church. But they all came to the reception, and we had one heck of a good time. In fact, my grandmother, I dearly loved her, she said, "How can these young people have so much fun on orange juice?" Not realizing there was significant vodka in the orange juice. Oh, I'll never forget that. She was such a sweetheart. From that day on, I didn't think about religion or spirituality for 21 years until it was time to divorce my husband, and I got a job here in Redding in California. And then I built my own house, which was an incredible experience because I didn't even know what color I liked. It took me weeks to pick out the carpet color, the wallpaper, and everything. So that in itself was a spiritual experience. But one morning I was sitting on my bed and I was tying my shoelaces, and my Aunt Pat walked into the room. And she's looking around going, "Oh, nice. Oh, this is nice." Well, Aunt Pat died 8 years before that. And, they vibrate at a different level. So to her, I was just sitting still. She ignored me, and I was in shock. So I was sitting really still, watching her go through my house. It was like, wow. So I called my mother, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, of course, but Aunt Pat visited my house. She came into my house, and she said, 'Well, did she say anything?' And I said, 'Well, she said this and that.' And she went, 'That's Pat. That's Pat.'" So that was a big one for me because I loved my Aunt Pat. But when my mother died a few years later, my brother and I were with her. It was very sweet, very sweet. But hours later, I was cleaning out her house, putting things in my car to take to the Salvation Army, and this tsunami wave just came over me. And I heard my grandma laughing. She had a very unique laugh. And I saw my mom and Aunt Pat dancing. I was like, it's all okay. And I have never, ever had one second doubt that they weren't just having one heck of a time wherever they were. It just felt so good. I've always felt at peace since then. So then a few years after that, I met this wonderful person, Paul Mitchell, who's now is my soulmate and husband. Met him here at church, ladies. Good place to meet people. And after a while, a friend said, "Let me take you to a psychic." And I went, "Well, okay." She said, "Oh, just for fun, just for fun." So I went to the psychic, and she just said, "What's your birth date?" And I told her. Didn't ask my name, didn't ask anything. Her message to me was that my relationship with Paul at that time was the most important relationship in my lifetime. I said, "I've been trying to understand it." She said, "Don't understand it. Honor it. Because this is an old relationship. It goes way back. And you already worked out the kinks of being new couples. You've already worked that out. So now you're here to help lift each other up. It's what we do with this relationship now that's of value." And I thought about that because I'd been trying to want to organize it, and that was impossible. So it was a unique way of seeing that. Wow, we've been here before. How would I know that? But I'll tell you, the day when I moved in with him, fairly quickly, who knows why I would do that? Anyway, and we had James and Andrea over to his house, and Andrea walked in and went, "This is like your house." And it was that energy. So it was a very interesting experience. The point being, there's a lot more going on here than you know. And to trust it when you have that intuitive notion, to trust it when you feel an energy, and you may not see it, but you feel it, just trust it. And so back to my friend whose husband's dying in the hospital. I said, "Well, I'll tell you what the Buddhists say, that this moment of dying is like taking off a tight shoe. It's a relief. You feel relaxed. And then you start to see, oh, There's more to this than I ever thought. And I said, often when people pass, they see people come to them who have also already passed. And I know he loved dearly his mother and father. And I said to him, I know the love you have for your parents will call them forward. They'll be meeting you. They'll be greeting you. And also I know the most important thing for him that day was that his wife brought him his Purple Heart from serving in Vietnam. And I said, I know the agony you've had over people who were killed standing right beside you. Love them. Call them. Let them meet you. Let them greet you. Okay. So back to von Prague. He has many people coming to see him, to talk and to communicate with others. And one day, this person brought a man named Andrew. Andrew wanted to talk to his grandmother, who raised him. But Van Prague wasn't able to get any vibrations from his grandmother. And he turned to Andrew and he said, do you know anything about Chicago? And Andrew said, yeah, I was born there and I lived there when I was a kid. And Van Prague said, I'm getting an impression of a school in Chicago, and I'm seeing a young boy, and his name is Ziggy. And Andrew stopped for a minute, and he went, oh yeah, that's Ziggs. I call him that because of a David Bowie song on one of his albums. We hung together as kids, and there was another kid, I can't remember his name, and Van Prague said, oh, how about Weiland? He goes, how did you know that? He said, he's here. And there's another man standing in front of you. He says he knew you and Ziggs and Weiland. He meditated a few more minutes because Andrew was in shock, of course. Who wouldn't be? He said, the man is a guardian angel of you. And he's been following you. He's concerned about you. He's showing me his hands, and they're calloused. And he's showing me smoke like a fire. And his name is Shorty. And Andrew screamed and screamed and screamed and started moaning that deep soul moan. And then he said, you know, Shorty was a janitor at our school. And one day there was an explosion in the boiler room, and Ziggs and Weiland and I were down in the basement, and we were caught. We didn't know what to do, and we were screaming. And through the smoke comes Shorty and saved our lives. I owe my life to that man. Van Prague said, he's watching over you. So what is it he's saying about Springfield? And Andrew said, yeah, a few years ago I was put in prison for selling drugs. And Van Prague said, Shorty came to you tonight because you're back on drugs and you need to stop now. Andrew got it. 5 years later, Van Prague heard that he had been giving lectures to Narcotics Anonymous groups, helping to save other people's lives. So I was sharing this with Paul last night, and we're going, is that really true? Could that really be true? But you know, our soul's on this journey for eternity. That's a long time. Wouldn't it be fun to be a guardian angel for some of that? It would be so cool. In 1841, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote the essay, The Oversoul. And he says we tend to see the world in pieces. We see the sun, the moon, an animal, a tree, a chair. But the whole thing is the soul, the oversoul. And he wrote this: man is a stream whose source is hidden. The soul, whose organs we are, should it appear would make us kneel down, our knees would just bend. Because the soul looks steadily forward, creating a world before us and leaving other worlds behind us. The soul knows only the soul, and all else are idle weeds for wearing. Idle weeds. The soul's communication of truth is the highest event in nature. It gives itself and passes into and becomes the person in whom it enlightens, which is you and me. Again, we realize we're just as old as we think we are. And right now, no matter how many years we've lived on this planet, we can continue to make it better if we want to make it better. It's up to us. Ernest Holmes, I have never read this before till yesterday. It was so cute. Ernest Holmes said, "When I get up every morning, I enthusiastically thrill to what unfolds by means of God as me. My meditation and morning practice hits a high note, sets the tone for the day. My spiritual mind declares it, my soul authorizes it, and my body gets the message. And I am totally enlivened and ready to greet the day." How did you feel this morning? Think about that. Think about that. We can all do a little more. Because Science in Mind, page 239, life cannot grow old. Creaks, huh? God expresses in us as perfection. So today's a new day. Hallelujah. As you leave, I encourage you to open your eyes, to open your mind, and to open your heart to everything you see, feel, sense, smell. Discover something new today. Do a little growing, a little learning, a little serving. Because every moment is an opportunity to move one step closer to comprehending your own divinity, which is timeless and ageless into eternity. Wow. So let's do a prayer on that. The truth is, and we know there's truth, every Sunday there's only one thing going on here, and that is the infinite intelligence of God that has created all. Why me? Why you? I don't know. But what we're doing is expressing our human nature as we find and discover our spiritual nature. So today's a new day to do that. And as we feel the sun and see a flower and the green of the trees, wow, spirit in action. And as we see family and smile and hug no matter what, we feel the energy of spirit in action. So I give great thanks being able to share this with you this morning. It warms my heart. It warmed the heart of the people I worked with this week. Warmed my relationship with my husband as he helped me understand more and feel it deeply. So I release and let go and let Spirit reveal itself in each of us today. And now we're on alert. We're on alert. And we are amazed. And this is the truth. And so it is. Thank you.